Hey everybody, this video is for the people in the disability sector. It is something that may push a few buttons, but it's a little bit of a what if game just to get you thinking and looking at what could be the bigger picture that's going on. Excuse my voice once again, surgery only 2 weeks ago, but also don't know what the new normal is. But let's dive into it. I'll do my best. So with the new pricing arrangement out now, and I'm not going to get into the pros and cons and all of that, there's enough discussion about that, but we know that there's a lot of people not happy. But the challenge is that a lot of people that have been involved in the NDIS, participants, businesses, have not been happy for a long time, and I hear it every day of the participants who, are just trying to get enough funding to live a quality life and are feeling like every single time they get a new plan, it gets cut. Now, some are very excited about a 5-year plan because it just means for 5 years they can keep going along so they can develop some form of normalcy, whatever that may look like for them. But the what if game I want to talk about is that when the NDIS started, it was for people with profound disabilities. And it was under the social services portfolio in government. It is now under the health portfolio in government. And a lot of people really didn't notice that and the significance of that. Now, that was planned as they started to change the legislation as well, the NDIS Act. And I've seen it mentioned many times in the last 2 to 3 years. The government also looked at how much the NDIS is costing, and a couple of years ago at National Cabinet, they all agreed that the states and territories would have their part in it, so we'll bring out foundational supports. So if we talk about foundational supports coming out, the shift from a social services portfolio, which has a different lens to it, to the health portfolio, which has, a completely different lens to it, and we talk about the cuts or the lack of increase in the pricing arrangement for service providers, and the talk about mandatory registration for all providers. And we discuss and we throw in there the fact that there's been the conversation around the recommendations from the NDIS review. So if you want to just bring all of that into the picture with the big plan of the NDIS not costing the government as much money, and then thinking that if they start foundational supports, I just want you to think about this next bit from what I'm going to say. Foundational supports, the goal of that is to provide services or access to services for people that have a disability, including people like myself, because technically having autism and ADHD is a disability, access to services that's not on the NDIS or that isn't being paid for by the NDIS. That's the key word, being paid for. So foundational supports, the goal of that is to provide access to services for people that live with a disability in Australia that do not have an NDIS plan. And we know that they want to slow the growth of how many new people get a plan, an NDIS plan, to 8%. And it's been up as high as 35% at some point, and 25%. And they don't think they're going to hit their target. They don't think that if they approved all the applications that they get or that they can bring it in at that 8%, reducing it to 8% growth. We know a lot of people have already been removed off the scheme, being told that, oh yes, foundational supports is coming. Now, foundational support sits under the health model as well, and foundational supports is linked to the National Hospital Agreement, right? And I've posted about that before. So that agreement, the hospitals all went to the government, that's not enough money. We're struggling to keep our doors open now. Hospitals are at breaking point. We've seen even a couple of private hospitals close, but hospitals generally are at breaking point. Now, my recent experience in a private hospital was great, but you could see that things were tight. And I guess because I've been around hospitals for 30 odd years, 40 years, I actually know what that looks like. But I've also worked in public hospitals where, 8 years ago or 9 years ago, where we like sitting in exec meetings, and it was like, oh no, we've gone over our KPI, and every time a public hospital goes over a KPI, that's less funding they actually get. So it's all built into KPIs and things like that, but we're not going to go into that. So the what if is that they've talked about development of foundational supports, reducing the growth of the NDIS, and providing access to services for more people in Australia living with a disability that don't get access to NDIS for that additional supports and things like that, which is i.e. foundational supports. And then the foundational supports is linked into the hospital budget, right? So once that agreement is put in place, then they can actually start to roll out some of the concepts that they've already developed for foundational supports. And I feel, my opinion only, I feel it's all been leading to this, to getting more these decreases. And they've also, just to add in there, they've talked about the NDIS navigator and the navigator role and who will do that and what that will look like. They're already they've reduced the amount that plan managers who don't charge a lot anyway can actually claim. So when they set up a new file for a person and they take it and they spend a couple of hours with that person, they can't charge for that. And that's quality time. If you add that up, if they onboard like 5 people a day and they're paying their staff that time, that the company's absorbing that cost. So everywhere is feeling it, except for maybe independent support workers. And maybe the nurses. But every single business is feeling it. So many businesses are going into liquidation and they're not paying their staff, and then the government picks it up. So what if not increasing the amount that support coordinators can charge? What if making some cuts in allied health is because maybe there's a bigger picture that's got to do with foundational supports? Pre-NDIS, I did care coordinator, navigator role, and for a health service provider. And that role was to connect people, it could be children, it could be adults, it could be people living with disability, it could be people over 65, with their allied health service providers and community nursing. And then sometimes we'd discuss with the council where they could get somebody to help them, pick up and go to appointments and those kind of things. So we worked with people, and not just people with disabilities, but all different types of people with different situations. And sure, there was a small co-payment that people had to make for each appointment and things like that. We had a system to try and get them as many appointments as possible, but those appointments were capped at like, I think 5 per service. So we became very strategic in where we booked appointments for people to do. Sometimes we got them like 15 appointments in a year to help them keep going, to build capacity to get the services and the support that they needed. And we had to be clever about it. But the thing was that, they got help with their home modifications applications. They got help with, funding for it and applying for that funding and things like that. So that was things that was in place before, amongst other things. So one of my biggest questions is there really this whole direction of, yes, we're keeping the NDIS, but do we maybe think that there's a whole direction in potentially downsizing the NDIS a little bit so it's only certain people can get access to it, like originally it was profound disabilities, and then having something else that actually is in between NDIS and the public health system, this foundational supports? Because it's linked into the hospital, it makes me think that there is this way that they can actually provide those allied health services. What support work looks like, I don't know. They can coordinate services, because we've been doing that for years, and in GP practices they trialled the care coordinator role in there as well, of navigating services through the GP clinic. That was a great role, that was a great trial, so I have heard that they're revisiting the results of that and how that could work. Just my thoughts, like, what do you think? Do you think that maybe there's a strategic plan in here on not increasing support coordination because maybe, just maybe, it's going to be phased out? Do we think that their plan for, saying, bringing the allied health back in to be in alignment with like Medicare and private health insurance, I mean, it doesn't quite work, but there's a little bit of a philosophy connecting back to that. Do we think that maybe because once foundational supports, that hospital agreement is locked in, they start launching foundational supports, that there's a transition of people over to that rather than it all coming from NDIS? And then, do we think that maybe the ultimate goal is less providers registered, because less providers are providing services through NDIS, which is then easier to hold to responsibility, compliance and things like that? Because at the moment we're getting up to 250,000 unregistered providers. Like, we're getting up there every day. There's new providers that open. It just depends on how many close. But those figures are skyrocketing of unregistered providers. Imagine trying to register all of those and keep tabs on every single one of them. It's a big job, and they can't get it done right in a timely manner now, and there's people falling through the cracks. We see it. So what if there's a bigger picture that is all about less providers and they're all registered, less services being fully paid for, like all through just NDIS. Maybe there's foundational supports and NDIS, which they've talked about. Someone can be on NDIS and still access foundational supports for other things. It's just a thought, because that's how my brain works for starters. But if they weren't planning something like that, if that wasn't their goal to do something like that, then why did we hear about foundational supports? Why are we seeing that little parts of foundational supports are being developed? NDIS is it's fragmented system, but the whole thing is fragmented. Before, when I did the care coordinator role through GP clinic and through the community health, is that we liaised with schools, we liaised with hospitals, we liaised for the person. Like, we did a lot of liaison work and connecting them and helping them, find the right service provider for them. And we helped them understand their referral process. We helped them when they weren't hearing back from people, like those kind of things, which is effectively the support coordinator role, because I've done that. So there's a lot of elements there that we've got either a duplication or it falls down. If it's not in, if somebody hears that someone's got an NDIS plan, often it just falls down and people go, oh yeah, NDIS will pay for that, just go through NDIS. Whereas if I walk into a physio allied health professional, I have to tick the box if I have an NDIS plan or not. And I've seen people, I've been with participants, and the minute they've ticked that box, everything has changed for that appointment. But leading up to that point of ticking that box, they were being treated, these are our fees, this is how much it is, and, this is what it's going to involve. And the minute that NDIS box was ticked, it was a whole different ballgame. So I honestly do not know, because I am not the government, whether it will be the travel that's been cut in half for allied health will be cut back. I don't know if they're going to do an increase. I do know that DIA for plan managers and support coordinators have been fighting for years and years to help them get those increments each year for the cost of living and the price of living and the payroll. But I'm just wondering, is there a bigger picture at play that we haven't seen what it is, but it's there behind the scenes playing out as it's meant to? I'm just curious. I could be completely wrong, but I feel over the next 18 months to 2 years, we're going to see a lot of things change. And I am bringing out a couple of tools in that for, like, I'm making them public. I already use them with my clients, but I'm making them public to help providers that don't come directly to me with their business, and also helping there's a couple of books coming out as well that will help. But I think we have to look at that there is a bigger picture going on here. It's just my opinion. If you hold tight that the NDIS will roll back those cuts, I hope I'm wrong. I don't think they will, but I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope from the information that's been fed back to me from the report that I have submitted, yeah, I don't know for sure. This is just my opinion. These are just my thoughts, but I want businesses to be prepared for them not to be rolled back. Only the government or NDIA can share that information to what they've decided. But as a business owner, I encourage you to have your moving forward plan as it is right now, the 1st of July. And then your plan for your business sustainability. If you want some help with that, reach out and we can have a chat, looking at how you're operating your business, the different strategies and tools that I have available that will really help you and shine a light. But for right now, plan as if they're here to stay, work it in as if they're here to stay, and make an informed decision yourself. Read the information yourself. Do your research, because at the end of the day, this is your business and your responsibility, and this is too big to mess around with. All right, I hope that helps. If the books and some of the tools, and there's a little course, a little program coming, they're all going to be out really soon. I'm still needing to rest a lot. That's going to take another probably 6 weeks. So I'm doing bits and pieces in between resting. But in the meantime, take care of you, and thank you for your support and watching.